In late October 2012, a massive earthquake struck off the coast of Haida Gwaii in northern British Columbia. The earthquake didn't cause any serious damage, but it did get media outlets across the province talking about what would happen in the event of a large-scale emergency. Amateur radio operators across Canada and the United States know that in the event of conventional communication systems breaking down, possibly due to a natural disaster, amateur radio technology will be crucial in passing messages between communities. CBC Radio Victoria recently did an interview with John Fuller, a local amateur radio operator, to discuss the role that ham radio technology would play in an emergency communications scenario. The interview, coming up right now, and yes, leading off the interview is indeed my voice, recorded from a local amateur radio repeater.
7-3 Jim, and we'll catch you later. VE7GOF from VE7ALD.
Well, when the big one comes, this may be the way we get the call for help. Ham radio operators in conversation. They're a potentially vital link in times of catastrophe, such as a devastating earthquake and tsunami on our coast. Fortunately, the 7.7 magnitude earthquake the other week resulted in very little damage, no injuries, and it didn't generate giant waves either. But when the big one comes, there is a strong chance the shaking will sever phone and internet connections, leaving devastated communities cut off from the outside world. And that's where people like John Fuller come in. He is the manager of the Esquimalt Emergency Radio Station, and he dropped by our studio to tell me more about it.
Good morning, Gregor.
Now, what's your role in an emergency? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, what I'm the manager of the emergency radio station in Esquimalt, which is a ham-operated station, and all my operators are volunteers. And what we do is we replace the telephones and anything that isn't working in the municipality, so that and if they wish to get to outside outfits, to the province or to another province or over to the States, we have the facilities to do that.
So you would be getting messages to and from the outside for all emergency officials within Esquimalt?
That would be the case if they, incoming traffic, as we call it.
All right.
And
and what kind of information might that be in the event of a big earthquake, for instance?
Well, basically, what happens is the mayor will declare a state of emergency, and then we will come under an emergency setup, and she has to inform the province that we are in a state of emergency, and we can contact the province and then get an emergency task number and the permission to go ahead, and that will give her the authority to put in emergency measures.
And is ham radio a normal component of most emergency centres for most municipalities on the island or around BC?
Yeah, this is right, because how ham radio comes about, of course, in the early days, people were fiddling with radio and building their own radio sets, and then there became the ham radio community. The government of the day and the government today give the ham radio community free operating frequencies, and then they expect that in time of emergency or war, when they need lots of operators, they have a pool to call upon, and that we will do the emergency communication. So that's the obligation on our side. Generally speaking, it's a kind of a fun thing where we chat with each other, but there's the emergency side, and that's the side that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're set up on a very rigorous basis.
Is that right? How so?
Well, for example, we live in an era of litigation, so that all our messaging has to be copied and recorded, and so that if somebody comes back later on and says, oh, well, the message never got passed through, we have a complete track. We know where the message went and who it was sent to and the whole thing.
What about, I mean, some people might be tempted in the age of internet and cell phones and so on to think that older technologies aren't available. But why is it so important to maintain this knowledge and your abilities collectively in ham radio in the event of an emergency?
Well, the important thing, and that's been shown up recently in many events actually. As a matter of fact, when they had a little bit of flooding on the, I think it was on the Souk Road or something, everybody got on their cell phones and the phone system went down. Mm-hmm. So that's just the local incidents. But generally speaking, the old and tried, all our equipment will work without electric power. We use our own generators, our own batteries, and everything else. So when the power goes off and there is nothing, then we're still in business.
What about your transmitters? I mean, there's some questions about cell phone towers being knocked out in earthquakes and so on, and even many of our radio transmitters and so on, perhaps for radio stations such as ours. What would your transmission abilities be like, and how might they be affected by an earthquake?
Well, fortunately, in the ham community, like we have the municipal station, supposing the mast comes down on that and we're unable to use it, well, then we have I have a number of people in my office there, and they have their own stations. One's just up the hill, and his is probably functioning, so we transfer it up there.
How would you be notified in the event of an emergency? I mean, I suppose if we had the mega thrust earthquake, we'd all be notified by the shaking. But what if it were something smaller, but still perhaps quite significant? Is there a system of informing people such as yourself?
How we would actually be aware of this, and it's been a subject of public discussion recently, is the first thing is if we feel the earthquake, then we know that we might be required, so we jump into action. If all the power goes off, if there's a major power failure, then I will go right down to the station, because I know when the power goes off, and we're very vulnerable on the island here,
yes,
then it's quite likely that I'll be required, and my other operators will do the same thing. Personally, I live on a boat. If I hear something, say, on the marine system, and they put in an advance alert, then I might use that. But it's using whatever information there is. I can give you a quick example.
Sure, that would be great.
I was in England having a holiday, and I have a little portable radio which I carry with me, and I was listening to the CBC on the international, and I heard the earthquake had taken place in Seattle about half an hour before. I was immediately concerned.
Of course.
Did it hit Victoria?
Of course, of course.
I'm not there to run the radio station, but there's always somebody that backs me up,
Yeah.
So there was a case. Well, I could have... with our packet radio, if there had been a problem, what I would have done was sent them an email, and they would have got it by radio. And I would say, this is where I am. If you have any problems, email me.
Oh, so it translates into radio, the email.
That's right.
Okay.
And it's done purely as a public service, and we're always looking for volunteers. And if you go to the emergency program in any of the municipalities.
Well, John Fuller, it's good to talk to you about this. Thank you for telling us more right now.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.